Um, we're talking about securing radio's place in the car, and I think it's a good place to start by recognising that not only is the radio industry very complicated, the automotive industry is very complicated as well. It's very global. There are a lot of manufacturers making a lot of different cars under a lot of different brands across the world. And historically, it's been relatively easy to include radio in vehicles because as an industry, we have used global standards. AM and FM radio are well established as broadcast mediums across the entire world. So if you're a car manufacturer and you want to put radio into your car, you just have to build in an FM radio or an AM radio and you are fit to go. We almost manage that with digital radio. We mostly use global standards for digital radio. There are 22 digital radio standards in use in the world. Broadly speaking, in the Americas, HD radio is used for digital radio, and in Europe and increasingly across Asia, we see DAB+ being used as the digital radio standard. So it's not ideal. We're now asking car manufacturers to deal with two different technical standards for radio in their vehicles, but it's manageable. We're now at the point where the question is being asked, what is the future of radio distribution, generally and specifically in vehicles? And the question we keep seeing being asked is the future of radio broadcast or IP? And I think that's probably framing the question wrong, both for the radio industry and also for the automotive industry. Probably the correct answer is that we have to use both, broadcast and IP, and if we're smart, we'll do that in two ways. We'll work out how to use those technologies in a complementary fashion, leveraging off the unique attributes of broadcast. It's a great technology, and it's a really good technology for people driving around in vehicles. But working it together in a complementary way, not a competitive way, with IP connectivity. Because a lot of the strengths that broadcast have are matched by different strengths in the IP domain. So our ambition is to create global open standards for this combination of broadcast radio and IP. So that when we're talking to the automotive industry about the role of radio in the car, we're doing so with one voice and asking them for one set of effort to keep radio prominent in the vehicle globally. A quick bit of background about RadioDNS. We're a not-for-profit organisation, and our job is to organise and synchronise the standards for hybrid radio across the world, for all broadcasters and for all car manufacturers. We're funded by our members, and you can see that our members are a really nice mix of broadcasters from all different parts of the world and vehicle manufacturers from all parts of the world as well. So around our table, we've got a good view of what we think we can agree to do in this space. And this is roughly what our ambition is. Our ambition is to use broadcast and IP together to create an experience of radio which is better than either technology can deliver in isolation. The worst outcome is that the consumer ends up with two different radios in their car, one that does FM, AM and digital radio, and another one which is streaming only. And it's complicated for them to understand why there's two, and we know that IP radios are not particularly easy to use. We know that people understand how to use broadcast radio, so we really want to hang on to that simplicity of broadcast radio in the car. Our job in enabling that is to create the technical standards to discover and transfer additional information, metadata, from radio stations to radio devices, so that when a car manufacturer builds our technology into their car, it will work in North America, it will work in Europe, it will work in Asia, it will work in China. They do one build and it will work with all radio stations around the world. It's quite important for us to say explicitly, we're not a database. We are not a service. We don't sell anything to the automotive industry and we don't sell anything to radio stations. Our job is to synchronize everybody to use the same standards, but not to do anything ourselves directly. So what specifically does that mean? I've talked very abstractly about standards, and I know that Lawrence will follow me with something that's a lot more specific about things that you can do and things that Radioplayer are doing based around the standards. So this is a bit abstract at this stage. accurate and official radio station data. One of the things about broadcast is it is primarily about audio. One of the things that we know about modern vehicles, and particularly connected cars, is that you need to provide a lot more information and content around radio stations. And this is a kind of abstract idea, but the one thing that everybody tends to understand about it is it's getting the radio station logo right in the car. I would say probably about 80% of our questions about how radio appears in cars is, why is my radio station logo wrong? And the answer is often because you're not providing it in the right way, and therefore the car manufacturer's got very little chance of getting it right. So although there's lots of fascinating things that we can do with this technology, one of the immediate things that both radio stations and car manufacturers want to fix is get the radio station logo right. And this provides a mechanism for doing that. But there are cleverer things that we can do. We talk about broadcast radio being the foundation and the center of the radio experience because it works really well and it's really easy for people to use. But there's some very clever things that you can do as you reach the end of broadcast radio coverage to use IP to fill in gaps and fill in holes. So you're not relying on IP streaming as your strategic distribution platform, but you're using it tactically to fill in the holes in your broadcast radio coverage. And when it's implemented well, it's brilliant. It's absolutely seamless. Another trend that we're seeing that the radio industry really needs to get onto is the use of voice to control functions in the vehicle. We have gone through a huge change in the way that drivers interface with their vehicles. We have moved from buttons and knobs and stalks on gear sticks into touchscreens, but we now know that touchscreens are also not a great interface into the vehicle, and lots of drivers are pushing back on touchscreens because they're actually quite hard to use. They look great, but they're hard to use. I was amongst some automotive people about 18 months ago, and we were talking about touchscreens, and they said honestly the reason why the automotive industry ran towards touchscreens was because they saw Tesla do it and they thought it looked cool. But actually, as a user interface, it's not very good, which is where voice comes in. So when we talk about voice assistants for vehicles, it's crucial that the voice assistant understands how people want to access radio. And the only way that they will get that right is if the radio stations are providing the right metadata. If you don't define your radio station in a way that a voice assistant can understand it, it's going to be very difficult for somebody to ask for your radio station. And the technical standards provide the ability for you to be very, very specific about how people ask for your radio stations. That's not just the official name of your radio station, but all the other different ways that they refer to your radio station that you want to pick up and capture, so that when they ask for it, they get your station. This is another huge trend that radio needs to engage with. It's the move to integrate operating systems like Android and Apple CarPlay directly into the dashboard. Underneath this statement, there is a lot of complexity. There is a lot of politics and a lot of strategy going on about exactly how this is going to happen in the car. And we've got to be careful not to get trapped by some of the decisions that are getting made. But it's critically important that the radio industry is making itself available to these new operating systems in the right way. Otherwise, it's just too hard. These are a bunch of people who are used to writing apps, and all of a sudden, you're asking them to deal with this weird radio thing. So we have to make it as less weird for them as possible so that it's easy for them to integrate in. But it does give us a huge opportunity to bridge the gap between radio and radio station apps. When we talk about using broadcast and IP together, we're not saying don't use IP at all. We're just saying use IP for the things it's really good for. And radio station apps are really good for things like on-demand audio. So anything that we can do to bridge the gap between broadcast radio and an app is a good thing for the listener. So here's an example of how that might look like in a car. there are radio stations, these are the broadcast radio stations that you can listen to on FM, on DAB or HD radio. But where the radio station has an app, it's easy for the listener to find that radio station app and to install it. They don't have to go through the Google Play Store, they don't have to go through the iOS App Store. They can see right on their radio that that radio station has an app that you can download and install. Once that app's downloaded and installed, it's not used for live radio. The live radio is still done their best over broadcast, but what it does is it brings all of the unique app content into the radio. So all of a sudden we can start offering things like Restart live radio and more recommendations like this live radio program. So you're still listening to broadcast radio, but you have all of these easy routes into the radio station's app. That might be giving people the best 5 on-demand pieces of audio for the current live show you're listening to. And you can just click on it, go into it, and when you're finished, it just comes back to the radio station, making this switch between live broadcast and on-demand IP as easy as possible. There are a couple of other activities that we do to try and help the automotive industry. The World DAB Automotive and Broadcaster Design Guidelines is a very long title for a very important document that explains how to make radio look really good in cars. A lot of the people we're working with, they're not used to radio. They don't really understand radio. So this is a design guideline document that tells them things like, this is where the station name should be, this is where the logo should be, this is what should happen when you change stations. It's the guidebook to making radio good in cars. It helps people who are used to IP app design understand how to use broadcast radio and this hybrid functionality. The other document that is getting a lot of attention is something called the EBU Connected Car Playbook. This is all of the European broadcasters, and increasingly now broadcasters from outside of Europe, harmonising their request to the automotive industry about what they want radio to be. And that's so important that we're asking with one voice across all of the radio industry for one implementation to a global automotive industry. So if you like, the playbook is the what, and what we do with RadioDNS is the how. Our job is just to enable the technology, but the playbook is a statement of what radio stations want from radio. But ultimately it's about features that drivers love and want to talk about. So here's a good example of a couple of things that practically, to make this less abstract, are really good examples of things. You're listening in your house to a radio station, you leave your house, you get in your car, and your car is already tuned to that radio station at the same point where you left it in the house. It then catches up on IP and drops you back into live broadcast. So it's completely seamless, your listening experience. You don't miss anything, you don't have to retune anything. It works back the other way. It's really a very user-centric, user-focused experience. I talked a bit about the automatic switching between broadcast and IP. What that means is it doesn't matter where you are, your favourite radio station preset will always work. It will always find your radio station. And I talked a bit about the linking between radio stations and apps and getting station logos right for branding. They're all things that drivers love to talk about. It makes their radio really good in their car. So I'll wrap up now before I hand in to Lawrence, because this is kind of the transition between my kind of abstract standards thing and then Lawrence talking specifically about Radioplayer. Because we are a technical standard, there are 2 ways that radio stations can get involved with what we do. It's an open technical standard. If you have technical staff, they can just implement it themselves. They can download our standards documents, they can look at our GitHub, they can download code examples, they can implement everything we do in your own technology stack, in your own cloud. That's absolutely fine. But if you're not a radio station that has developers and not a radio station that's set up like that, the recommendation is to work with a service provider who does use our technologies and does use our standards. And we've got some information on the website about those 2 different paths. But obviously, Radioplayer is one of the companies, one of the service providers that supports our standards. So to summarise, RadioDNS is a standards organisation. We think those global standards are the thing that's going to make radio scalable and affordable for car manufacturers to just keep putting in every single car. And that extra functionality is what enhances the experience of radio so that drivers will continue to love using radio in their connected cars. Thank you.
Please thank Nick Piggott. And now immediately welcome Lawrence Harrison, the Chief Partnerships Officer at Radioplayer. Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks, Nick, for the introduction and setting this up. And thanks to all of you guys for joining us in this session, and to everybody who's streaming in live as well. Absolutely delighted to be here on behalf of Radioplayer, and delighted to be sponsoring this event. And particularly pleased to be here in Jakarta. It's the first time for me. Fantastic city to be in, and Radioplayer is really proud to be involved. I think there are some amazing sessions in Radiodays Asia, and you'll be attending some of those. But I think you could make a strong argument for this session around securing radio's future in the connected car for being one of the most important. I know that probably across Asia, and probably here in Indonesia as well, if you're a radio station, probably 40, 50% or even more of your radio listening takes place in the car. And actually it's a really tricky environment to be in. It's very competitive now. And so doing whatever you can to secure radio's future in connected cars is vital. So those of you that are here today and listening online, well done to you guys. You're in the most important session. Just to build on something that Nick said, just to touch on, so we're really clear on the differences between RadioDNS and Radioplayer. As Nick said, RadioDNS is a technical standard for hybrid radio, a really important one. Obviously, there are other important standards that we use in the car, DAB, FM, and a Radioplayer is not a standards organisation. We're not a technical standard. We are a service and technology provider. So we support standards. I sit on the board of RadioDNS and on World DAB, for example. And we use them in the way that we work. But our job as a service provider is to work with broadcasters and directly partnering with car companies to create the best possible radio experience and to keep radio listening strong. So we use that strong base of standards, and then we build on top of those, and we create the best possible radio experience. So we're out there talking to the car companies, creating partnerships with them. Now that work has never been more important. I touched on this just in the introduction. But the competition that radio is facing in the car has never been greater than it is today. As you all know, all new cars now will come with built-in connectivity, and many of them will come with new software such as Google's Android Automotive operating system, which creates an app environment in the car. And this allows other services, entertainment services, to come in with their own applications. And that's competition for radio. That's competition for our listeners' attention in the car. Not only that, the cars will typically come, as Nick touched on, with a bigger, high-resolution dashboard screen. And so it's absolutely true that radio needs to look good as well as sound good. There is an expectation created by some of those other services that radio will look like a great experience. It needs to compete in that environment. The danger is, if we don't, that radio could become invisible or even lost or outdated in these new cars, and it will lose ground. But there is a huge opportunity, and that opportunity is that radio can look amazing, and in many cases it does, and it needs to be prominent and retain that simplicity and ease of use while using the new technology that's available to create rich features that allow deeper dives into radio content. And that's what Radioplayer does on behalf of our broadcasters. Now what Radioplayer does in this regard is to work in partnership with many organisations to collaborate. But the starting point for that collaboration is to focus on the user experience. So we believe that the bedrock for a good radio experience in a car should be hybrid. And just to be really clear, what we're talking about here is the radio button. It's the button that says radio that gives you a great broadcast hybrid radio experience with broadcast working alongside IP. So Radioplayer is behind the scenes working with the car companies to support a good experience in that environment. We build on hybrid, we create rich features that allow deeper engagement, but that's done through collaboration and can only really happen through collaboration. And the starting point for that, and this is a bit of background to Radioplayer as well, is that we are funded and supported only by radio broadcasters. We're very unique in this environment. We were founded in the UK over 10 years ago now, and our founding shareholders, the BBC, Global, Bauer Media and Radio Centre, are still our shareholders today. But we're now supported additionally by thousands of broadcasters in Europe and increasingly globally. Not only that, we collaborate directly with the broadcasters, but also within organisations like RadioDNS, like World DAB, like NAB. And that collaboration is really, really important to us. Nick mentioned an initiative called the Playbook earlier. That's now become something called Radio Ready. And Radioplayer is integrally involved in that with the broadcasters to deliver against those requirements. So in step with what the broadcasters are looking for in car, but then taking that to the car companies and making sure we can deliver against it. And talking to the car companies, this is the most important level of collaboration that we have. So being able to sign partnership agreements with key brands that enables us then to develop a baseline experience and then build on that to keep radio strong in the car. Today we have partnerships with 17 car maker brands, you can see them there, and these partnerships are absolutely crucial. This does involve planning and understanding jointly how you can deliver the best possible radio experience and then growing and building that over time. They're long-term partnerships and there are more to come. But these collaborations are key to what Radioplayer does on behalf of the radio industry. And I want to give you just an idea of what that looks like practically. So when you talk about what a Radioplayer experience would like in car, just to remind you, we're talking about the radio button, but the foundation for that is what Nick talked about, which is hybrid radio, broadcast working with IP. And I just want to show you a quick demo video, and I hope the audio is working. And this is of one of the partner car companies that we work with, which is BMW, and a hybrid experience in one of their cars in the UK. But I think it will give you a really good idea of what that can look like when we're working together with them. So I'm just going to try and play this video.
Hi, we're here with our partners BMW in central London, and I'm delighted to be able to show you the radio experience in a brand new BMW iX4 that is powered by Radioplayer. Let's have a look. So the starting point when you get into the car will be this home screen. Everything is an app now. This is fully configurable by the user. Obviously we've placed radio in a prominent position here. Let's go into that. This is the core radio button experience. This is broadcast radio. When you go into this, the first thing to note and to explain is that this is a broadcast radio bringing in additional information about your station, what we call metadata, using the internet connection. So it's a hybrid radio, and it's using that data to dynamically update the data you see on the screen here. Now the first thing that it enables BMW to create this really nice A to Z station list of all the available stations on DAB and FM in the location that you're in. To do that, they're using the broadcast identifiers from Radioplayer, which enables them to identify whether a station is available on DAB or FM. And you can see from this list of stations, if a station is available on DAB, it will default to there first. If it's available on FM, it would then show that station on FM. All the metadata, the station logos, the station name, as I said, the broadcast identifiers are all coming from Radioplayer, and we think that really brings the experience to life. Now the other thing that is really important about the metadata that we provide is, for example, the now playing data. So this is information like, for example, track and artist now playing data, which is really important, we think, to bring the experience to life, but also important for our partners. And again, if you just flick around, you can see here the heart, we're getting this is the script with Hall of Fame, and it just gives more information to the user about what they're listening to. The other part of now playing data is that we can also provide a set of fully licensed artist images to our partners in this space. So if you go on to pick a station, if you go onto a station like Radio X Classic Rock, Here's a good example. They're now playing With or Without You by U2. You can see here there is an artist image provided by RadioPlayer which has immediately come up. If there is an image provided by the broadcaster themselves, we'll show that, but if not, the image comes from RadioPlayer. You could see the song has changed, the track and artist has changed, and the artist image has been updated, all coming from RadioPlayer, from our broadcasters. We think this is a really great enhanced broadcast experience driven by hybrid radio and powered by RadioPlayer. Now, we want to keep on building on this and developing it with our partners at BMW, but I'm really pleased to be able to show it to you today.
So I hope that gives you a sense of kind of what we think is basically what all car radios should look like at the minimum level today, using that rich metadata to create a really good experience. And again, what we will have seen there is that what we're trying to do is to ensure that the broadcaster's own brand looks as strong as it possibly can do in the car. And one of the examples we have there is that if the broadcaster is providing their own now playing images, which many do, then we would show those, default to those first. But if they don't, we can supplement that with our own fully licensed library of artist images. And again, that's one of the things that we do as part of our partnerships. But just going forward, there are a few things I wanted to touch on, because that's a kind of a really good baseline experience, we think. But there are some key elements to what we're doing with our broadcasters. The first thing is that we fight hard for radio's prominence. So I touched earlier about the increased competition in the dashboard, and in that app environment, it'd be very easy for the radio button to get lost. If it's simply listed alphabetically as another app in a huge long list of apps, it won't have the same prominent position it enjoys today. And we're one of the only organisations that lobbies, and we require as part of our partnerships for the radio button to have a prominent position on the dashboard. You want a minimum number of clicks, 1 or 2 clicks maximum, to get through to radio and start listening to the station you want. And we require that of our partners, and that's a difficult conversation to have now. But we do have those conversations. I'll talk about that in a moment. Obviously, I talked about focusing on the user experience, but we're doing all this to keep radio listening strong. And one of the things that we've also launched, one of the new initiatives, is to create a data and AI platform where our broadcasters can log in and see the listening to their station on all the products we have, but increasingly now that will include listening in the car. Just to dive into the first couple of those very quickly. Okay, sorry, these are actually the older slides, but I won't worry about that. I'll just talk about what I was going to say. So what I was going to show was some images, dashboard images of cars, partners that we work with, where we can actually show the prominence of radio, what that looks like, and where the radio button is appearing higher up the menu, either on the home page or only 1 click through. And as I said, that's a key requirement. The other thing that we've done is we have just launched a new hybrid radio demo application. And that's really important because that allows us to showcase and demo not just what the core experience should look like, but also new features that we're bringing to the car makers on behalf of the broadcasters. Nick showed some good examples earlier, but we're doing a lot of work to ensure that we can make that link between broadcast radio and a broadcaster's own application. And there are real benefits for the user in that, because we know that some broadcasters will make available exclusive content in their own application, on-demand content typically, and we can now make that link to the broadcaster app, and we can show that. We've also demoed, and we're developing a more feature, and also the ability to restart and rewind live radio. And again, that will allow, if the broadcaster has its own app, we would link to that to get to, for example, the beginning of a show or a podcast. But we could also deliver that natively in the radio experience if a broadcaster doesn't have their own automotive app, because it tends to be at the moment the larger broadcasters that have those. Again, apologies, I had slides that show all this, but I'm afraid they're showing an older deck. So, just to kind of, last 2 slides, just to summarise, the core for us, for RadioPlayer, is to focus on the radio button experience in a hybrid broadcast way working with IP. However, there are other ways to listen in the car, and just to touch on those, we do also have a RadioPlayer branded streaming app, and that's available in the markets that we are currently supporting. And also in some key territories we have a smartphone app as well, and that would be compatible of course with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. As well as the automotive work that we do, we also have consumer B2C products as well. I touched on the smartphone app there, but also smart TV apps and integrations with voice assistants and smart speakers. But automotive is our main focus, and that's our priority to keep radio strong on behalf of our broadcasters. And again, just to repeat, the data platform we have will give you insights into the listening to your station on all those platforms, including in car. So just to summarise, from our perspective, it's really important that all broadcasters focus on, first and foremost, the visual experience. As I said before, people are looking at this, car makers are prioritising this so that radio looks as good as other applications in the car. That means you need to deliver static and dynamic metadata to us, information about your stations. And we can help. The partnerships that we create with the car makers enables us to get that data live in cars on the road. We're currently powering over 4.5 million cars on the road today, and that's going to grow very quickly. So if you're interested to learn more, please do come and speak to me afterwards, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lawrence. And thank you both for a very clear explanation of where both RadioDNS and Radioplayer sit and work with each other. Are there some immediate questions? Les? Mike is coming to you. You guys have mics in your hand?
Thank you very much. We've heard a lot this morning already about information and gathering information through apps and so forth. You know, this is a bit like an app in a car. It is connected. So I wondered if you could just enlighten us a bit on what Radioplayer and RadioDNS are doing about gathering information about listening for the broadcasters for their own analytics.
Yeah, thanks, Les. That's a really, really important question. I mentioned in the presentation that over the last sort of 12 months, Radioplayer has done a lot of work to develop a new data and AI platform. And what that does is that provides an interface for our broadcasters that are working with Radioplayer to log on and see all the listening across all the Radioplayer products, kind of in real time almost, appear on the screen. And as a broadcaster, obviously you can go in, you can see the listening, only the listening that applies to your own station, but you can see where that listening is taking place, including, and this is really important, in the car. So we're now that we have this platform available, we're working with our car maker partners to make sure that we can integrate with them and start to show the listening, for example, on FM, DAB, where that's taking place location-wise, time of day, and that kind of thing. And we know how important this is to the broadcaster, so we're delighted to have that available now.
Another question? I thought I saw another hand. Yes, over there.
Hey guys, I'm Ace Radio Broadcasters, Regional Victoria. We have a lot of AM radio stations, so just wondering, obviously it's a bit of a battle with car providers keeping AM radio alive. The Australian government won't approve us to move to FM, so just wondering your thoughts on that.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah,
All right.
I'll do. You go on.
Okay.
I had the first one.
I mean, it's a very good question. AM is something that we have been looking at how we can support in this hybrid scenario. It is tricky to do for a lot of reasons. We know that car manufacturers are finding it harder and harder to justify putting AM radio into vehicles. For technical reasons, it's harder to pull off some of the hybrid radio tricks with AM radio. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do some of these things of enhancing AM radio with IP. It's just that the circumstances up to now have been difficult to make it happen. I think we would be, of all the things that we need to achieve with radio and protecting radio's position in the dashboard, we can make fastest progress with it at the moment with digital radio and with FM radio. It's then a little bit easier to kind of hitch the AM wagon to some of that and deal with some of the specific technical problems around AM radio kind of separately once we've said we think we've secured radio generally in the car. We can then come back and look at the specific things about like AM antennas are hard, what happens with the EV vehicles and noise rejection. So it's definitely not a no, but in our kind of global objective of we need to keep radio at the top of the car, the easiest, fastest route to do that at the moment is with FM and digital.
One of the important things in Australia is the land mass, and stations like Ace Radio need that AM for coverage. Where currently, our government is currently looking at legislation on prominence, as in America, which will help. But that's a really interesting insight into, even if we continue with AM radio in Australia for 10, 20 years to come, the need will still be there. So great to understand it. And what about from a radio
Yeah,
player
just to come on it, and it's a really great question. As you know, and there are key markets where AM is still so important. Australia is a good example. The US is another. We get asked about that from a broadcaster perspective, but also now from a car company perspective. So we do have a way that we can support AM, and that we know that that's really important for the broadcasters, which is part of the reason that we've done it. And I think going forward, we'll start to see some cars that have that kind of capability. It is a challenge because of the nature of AM, as you're probably very aware. But we know how important it is, and we also know that for some markets we touched on, AM is there to stay for the foreseeable future. So we know it's important.
Yeah, we would love to overlay AM on those transmitters with a digital radio platform as well, which would then, as Nick was saying, deliver all the things needed. But at the moment, that's not currently in Australia. Another question? Okay, we're almost wrapping up, but I wanted to raise the point of voice control in cars. I was quite delighted to hear that you've studied that and that there is a preference for voice control. I mean, it seems obvious to me, but it's great that we're now starting to find that drivers and passengers are actually seeing the importance of that rather than trying to touch their screen while they're driving.
I mean, it was very insightful. I think we might both have been at the same event. It was very insightful to hear a load of people from the automotive industry said, oh yeah, we only did touch screens because Tesla did. And it looked flash and it looked cool. And they kind of threw all of their user testing and all of their safety stuff out the window because they were in this kind of real anxiety that they were going to look old-fashioned. But just the growing evidence that drivers find them real. I mean, I don't like using touchscreens when I'm driving. But the problem is the genie is out the bottle. There's so much complexity in a vehicle now. You can't put it back to knobs and buttons. That would be difficult to do. And I think the particular challenge I didn't go into this in detail on when I was talking, but it's a particular challenge for radio is, my goodness, you watch people trying to use voice control to access radio, and you have some sympathy for the manufacturer because people are very erratic in how they ask for things. But you also see the manufacturer's frustration. Let's take a great radio example in Australia. There's a radio station in Sydney that some people will call Gold, and some people will call 2WS, and some people will just say, just want to listen to Amanda. There'll be a myriad of different ways. And at this point in time, the only thing that car manufacturer knows about that radio station is what's on the RDS display. And if the listener routinely refers to that radio station by some other name, they have no chance of knowing that.
And once that's perfected, will RadioPlayer be able to handle those things?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a crucial topic. And if I can, I just very briefly, I did a presentation, it was about 12 months ago now, and I did some research and went and sat in 10 sort of cars, some of the best-selling cars in the UK, and tried the voice control in them. And it was a real shocker. And these are new cars, right? These are new cars coming off. One of them, in fact, this was actually a car that a manufacturer that works with Android Automotive Google, so it's using Google Assistant, told me that it was going to play a station on a smart speaker, and I was sitting in a car. So it was all wrong. But it's so important from a driver distraction perspective, from a safety perspective. And so just to give you some practical examples of what we're trying to do, We have building a database of sort of synonyms, and Nick touched on this from a RadioDNS perspective, where our stations can enter the sort of nicknames that people actually ask for their station by. And then when we start a relationship with a car company, we then talk to them about which voice assistant provider they're working with. So for example, we have relationships with other products at the moment with Google and with Amazon, but they might be using a white label voice provider. And then we try and make sure that we're plugged into that voice provider so that they've got access to this data. So at the very least, you know, the user can, if someone's asking for a station, no matter what they ask for, if from the broadcaster we've got the right sort of synonyms, then they should get it in the car. Now, make that sound quite simple. It's much more complex than that. But that's the theory, and that's what we're working on.
And of course, from the smart speaker side of things, I've had a look at Amazon Radio Skills Kit, which has come a long way and allows radio stations just to have an account, log in, list all the things that they find their listeners are asking to identify the station. So are you able to draw data from that kind of interface?
Yeah, well, just to give you another example, we recently, a while ago, we announced a partnership with Google on smart speakers for Google Assistant. And that's about to launch anytime soon. And that will, obviously there's an element to that which is about making sure you're servicing the right station. But then if a station is with Radioplayer, it will mean that the station plays through Radioplayer. And in our insights, they'll be able to see where that's come from and track that. So, yeah.
Terrific. Thank you very much, everybody. It's lunchtime now, and we resume in track 2 at